Yeah.
Okay.
And it does say live now at the top of my screen. You're live.
That's right. So are you.
Somebody's live.
Somebody live.
All of us.
All of us.
Hold on a second. You're live too. Just can't hear yourself.
Guys, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Dad,
So
should I move to the office?
Oh.
we are Exodus chapter 12, verse 10. Nope, that's
Well,
chapter.
we had 11, but that's all right.
No, we went back to
Verse
10.
Would you plug for me?
verse 10.
Oh.
All right. Exodus chapter 12, verse 10. We're in the middle of this Passover sacrifice.
Right.
All right. So who's in Boston? It's Dina, Cy. Who else is
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Amy can't make it today, and I haven't seen Judy.
Slim pickings today, huh?
It is.
That's
Country
okay.
West. It's a Country Western Study Group.
It's all right.
Well, I'm in Delaware, of all places. So you are not getting me from Texas. You are getting me from Delaware.
What's in Delaware?
My parents. Hold on. Dad, come wave.
Hi, Dad.
Hold on. Dad's going to wave for the camera here.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Betsy's dad.
Right.
She got something on her face.
It's a microphone.
Oh,
It's a microphone. Not to worry. Just a microphone.
All right, let's do it.
Let's
I
go.
just got you.
Oh, I just got you too. Woo!
Uh-oh. You went away.
Ah,
I'm sorry. Hang out 2 buckets. Say, auto-
I gotta change the glasses.
all right, Dina, do you want to start reading for us?
Okay. You shall not leave any of it over until morning. If any of it is left until morning, you shall burn it. And we talked about that last week, about the fact that because it was for a specific purpose, it was sanctified, and whatever wasn't eaten had to be given as a sacrifice.
Right.
Does it tell them how to burn it?
We talked about that a little bit last time. We talked about boiling, right?
No, that was how the meat was prepared. But no, it just gets burnt.
So it's not, there's no ceremonial, there's no make sure that Aaron is in the room, it's just...
No, because this is a home. They're doing this at home. This is the
Right.
Right.
This is the night of the Passover.
You shall not leave any of it over till morning, because you are going away. One cannot leave a sacred offering to be thrown out or eaten by dogs.
Okay.
All right, that's all I got for 10.
All right.
11.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
This is how you shall eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it hurriedly. It is a Passover offering to the Lord.
Oh,
You just read that. Sorry, I just want to read that one more time. This is how you shall, your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand. You shall eat it hurriedly. Okay. Your loins girded, ready for the road.
Okay, so here's my question that I've always had about Passover. We have time to prepare an entire feast. We have time to eat the entire feast. We have time to do all of this stuff, but we don't have time to let the bread rise.
I asked that question last week, Betsy.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It seems that this whole idea of matzah was something that was known in Egypt at the time, and combined with this Pesach offering is also this festival of matzah.
Mm-hmm. Right. but it's, I guess what like the way that we teach it to little kids is we never had time for the bread to rise, and we just had to go, and but we had time to do everything. We had time to pack, and we had time to make a sacrifice, and we had time to burn our leftovers.
But we're not in a rush yet. The 10th plague hasn't happened yet.
Right. So how come we're not baking bread?
So what I suggested last week is that we're eating matzah here, not for the purpose of this ritual, but for the purposes of future rituals. So in the future, matzah will represent rushing out of Egypt. Right now it doesn't yet, but in the future it will. My other phone is right.
Also, if you sneak a look ahead to verse 14, it talks about unleavened bread. Or it's 15, I guess.
Right. So the unleavened bread is because they wanted unleavened. That's my point. The unleavened bread is because they wanted unleavened bread. The unleavened bread
Sorry.
is the unleavened bread is not because
What's that?
it had to be.
No, it had to be, but not because of time. It had to
Right,
be because
but not
it was
because of time.
commanded.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
It had
That's what I meant.
it had
Well,
it had to be as a symbol that would for future generations. That would be used for future generations.
okay, I have a dumb question.
No question's dumb unless it's not asked.
Okay, here's my not dumb question. I do not have a chumash in front of me. Which parsha is this exactly?
Bo.
Oh,
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay, I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Okay. It is a Passover offering to the Lord. The offering is called Passover, Pasach, because the Holy One hopped over the houses of the Israelites who lived among the Egyptians, hopping from Egyptian to Egyptian, while the Israelite in between them escaped. The name implies that you must hop to it when you make this offering. I like that. That's Rashi.
all right. All right, so the Hebrew noun Pesach has given rise to the English adjective Paschal, used to designate the Passover lamb, the Passover holiday, and Easter. Like the word matzah, Pesach is assumed in this narrative to be an immediately understandable term, so it too must have a history that predates the Exodus. The etymology of the word is uncertain, although it may be related to an Akkadian root meaning to appease. Three traditions about the meaning of the stem Pesach have survived: to have compassion, to protect, and to skip over.
Wait, compassion? Where is compassion coming from?
It's one of the meanings from the Shorash for Pesach. That's what it says. Strictly speaking, as noted, only the 14th day of the month can be called Pesach, but in the course of time, this term was extended to cover the entire week of the festival.
Interesting.
Betsy, can you move the mic a little farther from your mouth? We're hearing lots of breathing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. It's delightful breathing. It's good to know that you're breathing.
Not my mic, not my house, not my not my setup.
Listen to this. Some commandments have names. This one is called Passover because God passed over the houses of the Israelites. Many give it the meaning to take pity.
Well, that's that, to have compassion.
I would say that compassion and pity are not at all the same thing, but that's me.
I think they come from different places. I agree. Compassion you do because if I'm compassionate to someone, it's because I care about them. My intentions are for good for them. If I have pity on someone, it feels like it's almost the opposite. The actions may be the same, but they're coming from a completely different place. Is that how you differentiate the two?
I think that compassion is much more of a positive word. Pity is there's a whole lot of judgment involved with pity.
Hmm, interesting.
Do you see it differently?
No, I agree with you. I agree. All right.
Where are we?
We are.
Right.
Hold on.
Does anybody have anything on why we eat it hurriedly?
Yeah. So, uh,
It's
so Barbanel says it is not to be eaten for pleasure, but in fulfillment of the commandment.
which is completely the opposite of the way we treat a Seder.
Right. You're right. In many ways, the Seder is a very conflicted. That's not the right word. Um, it is built-in conflict. That is to say, on the one hand, we use all of these symbols that talk about being hurried and having to rush and the bitterness, and at the same time, we're sitting back. We have a long, drawn-out meal. There's no rush. I have a note here at the bottom that says that uh, when it tells us that our loins should be girded, it says, from this we can learn that it was customary to ungird one's loins and to take off one's shoes before eating. Our sages have already told us that a meal begins with the loosening of one's belt, as is still customary in some places. That's Passover. That's Pesach, except we usually
Right.
loosen our belts after the meal, right? But that's I mean, Passover is all about slowing down, telling the story again. But the story itself is a very fast one. It's one that requires us to remember great speed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
All right, verse
ready to
12.
go on?
Yes?
For that night I will go through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and I will mete out punishments to all the gods of Egypt. I, the Lord. So much for your angel of death.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
why should they be talking about the they're forming the Passover before even they're talking about Passover or setting it up even before?
Why don't we just do it in real time?
In other words, they haven't even left Egypt,
Right.
and they're talking about celebrating the Passover for 7 days.
Right. It's a fair question.
Doesn't make sense.
Why? Why now?
Because how do they know that this is going to be, that they're
Right, so it
going
tells
to
them it's going to be
actually be losing?
successful. So
Say
it
again?
tells them that it's successful. So is this the first time that God tells them, I will deliver you, it will happen. Not only will it happen, but you're going to remember this forever. Is this the first time that that's said?
No. God tells us all the way back to Abraham that we're going to be okay.
Right, but in the moment, is this the first time in, I don't know, the last 4 chapters? Is this the first time since God's been talking to Moses on a daily basis?
I don't
The
think so.
assumption is everything is going to work out.
I think God has told Moses. Dina, do you agree?
God has told Moses that they're going to get out, but that it's not going to be easy because he's going to keep hardening Pharaoh's heart.
Right. But eventually, God told them they're going to get out. Didn't they?
Yes, but I agree with, and I do not know the name of the lady sitting on the couch. I agree that this this part is new. Not only, the assumption is, yay, and you know how okay this is going to be? I'm going to tell you now how you're going to remember this.
Okay, so the beginning of chapter 11, and
Okay?
the Lord said to Moses, I will bring but one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. After that, he shall let you go from here.
But this is not about God. This is not about Pharaoh. Pharaoh in the verse that you just read is not mentioned. If you look at chapter 12, it's do this, do that, do the other thing. God says, I'm going to kill the firstborn. You're going to do the blood thing. This is going to be a memory. This is going to be a memorial. You're going to eat unleavened bread. Pharaoh is not, I'm looking through it. I do not see Pharaoh represented at all,
But why would Pharaoh be represented in this part? This is
because you just read to me, Pharaoh will let you go. And
Yeah,
this is not about Pharaoh.
but this whole thing and all this stuff that we're reading is about how we are going to do this.
Right. This is us and God.
What we're going to do after this. Wait, ahead in verse 30.
Okay, scrolling. It's verse 30. Oh, there's Pharaoh. Okay.
Okay, so this is all still Hashem talking to Moses, telling him what to tell the children of Israel to do to, number one, prepare for this exodus, and number two to remember it in years to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I continue to feel that all the things that, all these rituals and the Passover, all this stuff, this isn't about right now. This is what you said before, Betsy. This is a future ritual that you're playing out right now, not for yourselves necessarily, but for the sake of people in the future knowing how to do it.
Right.
Right, because it's not like they've got time to write a book. So if they do it this night the way it's going to be done in the future, then next year at this time they will remember how they did it, and they will be able to tell the story and do it again, and so on through the generations.
Okay, so actually that's a wonderful reflection on pedagogy, right? That the best way to learn something is by
do it. Right.
Right.
Okay, if it's the remembering that's important, why do it now and not in a year? Why not? Guys, here's what's got to happen tonight. Pack, make a sacrifice, do what you need to do. Here's what has to happen tonight. And a year from now, the first day of Nisan of next year, I'm going to come and tell you guys how to remember this holiday. I'm going to tell you, what the memorial piece is. Why give the memorial piece before they're even safe, unless it's to comfort them and say.
But a big part of what they're doing is thumbing their noses at the Egyptians. And it's important that they
Explain.
They're sacrificing, and we talked a lot about this in the past couple of weeks. They're sacrificing in public an animal that represents one of the gods of Egypt.
Okay,
this is
now I get it. Yep, I get it. Okay.
So a year from now, it's not going to have the power that it has right now.
But I would argue also that in a year, it's not going to have the power for the Israelites. That, after when someone dies, or after 9/11, or whenever there's a tragedy, we don't wait to set up. Hi, Andrew. We don't wait to set up memorials. Things pop up. Flowers are placed. Shrines are
immediately.
Right. That happens right away, and I think that that's because in order for this ritual to resonate with us, I think it has to have an emotional quality. And that emotional quality
happens at the time.
Right. Look, I remember when, I just want to close the door. I left open. I remember when right after Liat passed away, we were doing these rides, these bike rides for fundraisers. And the first year, we raised, I don't know, $12,000. And the second year we raised $10,000. And slowly but surely it got to the point where the amount of energy we were putting into it wasn't worth it for the money that we were raising. And it petered out. And the prime reason it petered out is because the emotions, they were so heightened in that first year and that second year that people really it resonated with people. But as time went by, it didn't resonate so much anymore.
Because not everybody remembered her.
Right. And I think that one of the powerful, so it's both one of the powerful things about Passover, but it's also one of the challenges of Passover is how do we make this story still be an emotional part of our lives as opposed to just a story that we read? Right? How do we make sure that this is our story, not just a story that we read from the Bible?
I don't follow it.
How do we make sure that this story is really an emotional part? We're connected to it. We're invested in it, rather than we're just going through the motions of a ritual. Anyone can go through the motions, right? Anyone can fulfill a ritual, but that's not a very Jewish way to do things. Just doing the motions is not very Jewish. You're supposed to have some feeling, some kavanah, some intention, some passion for what you're doing. So, on the one hand, I think that having this story, or rather, doing the ritual at this moment, is to highlight for us the importance of it being an emotionally charged experience. And I think it's very challenging for Passover or any other Jewish holiday to be an emotionally charged experience for most Jews. I think it's very hard.
But it's easier. I think it's easier for Pesach because there is a story that's well known that goes along with it. As
Hanukkah.
There's a story for Hanukkah, even though Hanukkah is not a Torah holiday. It's much more difficult for Shavuot because there's no story that the majority of Jews connect with that holiday.
Well, I would say
I understand this is a story, but Jews don't connect it.
It's not just a story. It's not the story that's lacking. It's the ritual that's lacking.
Right. What's missing from Shavuot is stuff. Right? There's stuff. Shavuot does not have a Chanukiah. Shavuot has dairy food, but it doesn't have like a latska. It doesn't have matzah. It doesn't have tangible stuff. It doesn't have stuff that's in the gift shop. It's like no, seriously, it's missing the stuff because we don't have the stuff.
It's missing the story.
No, I disagree. I think
if you have a story, then you can make stuff to go with it.
I think the story's there. I think that I don't know. I think the story for Shavuot is actually pretty compelling. It's just that we don't have props to tell it with.
Look, Shavuot is if Passover is our physical liberation. That's a physical thing. Sukkot is our physical journey through the wilderness. Shavuot, there's nothing physical about it. It was an entirely spiritual event. It's an entirely spiritual story. So
no, I disagree. I disagree 100%. Standing at Sinai, a mountain shaking, thunder. There is a lot of physical in Shavuot. But the problem is we don't act it out. If we stood at a mountain, if we did what my son's first grade did one year, and actually stood at the bottom of a mountain and had the sounds of thunder and had one of his moreh coming out with the commandments and the tablets and standing up there and if we had any of that stuff, it would. I think that is where the inspiration and the connection comes from. The problem is we don't really do that with anybody past second grade.
And I would argue, Betsy, that the reason we don't do that is because we're not supposed to, right? There's a reason why we don't know where Mount Sinai is. There's a reason why we don't know where Moshe is buried. The reason is I think is because this day is intentionally not supposed to be about that space. It's not supposed to be about a mountain. It's not supposed to be about a person. That's why we learn on Shavuot that it wasn't just the 600,000 souls that were there, but it was all souls. It wasn't about a physical experience. It was about a soul experience. And I think that there's no way to celebrate that in the realm of physicality. So yes, of course, there's thunder and lightning, and believe me, I mean, at Beth Abraham, Dina, and they'll all remember that, we had these stone tablets, and I used to bring them out every Shavuot, and we'd set them up right in front. And I talked about, try and remember what it was like to be there. What did you see? What did you smell? What did you feel? But even that, it's because it was not a physical experience, because we have no memory of it, and no rituals from it, no symbols from it, no anythings from it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's blintzes.
Right.
That's the best
Cheesecake.
thing to do are blintzes. So,
How can you actually feel emotional about something?
well, let me ask you this: you have emotions presumably about the Holocaust, right?
Similarly,
I get emotional about the Holocaust. I was not there.
I lived through it. I wasn't there.
Right. So why? How can we be emotional about that piece of our history?
It's
and not
only
about.
when I read it that it.
Okay. So when you read the Passover story, do you get emotional?
Well, not really. Only when I see the movie.
Right. So that's interesting. So it's very interesting. The visual is really important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you seeing a movie, actually seeing what happened and done.
Right. That elicits emotion. Wait, before we go on, we never introduced ourselves, and I apologize. And Betsy is new, so can we just all say who we are? Do you want to start?
I'm Muriel Schwartz.
Muriel, I'm David. Who's in Canton?
Dina.
Oh, come on. Show us your
Hi.
All right, Dina.
Hi, Dina. And Cy is back there. I see Cy.
Andrew.
And Andrew. And you are in Delaware?
I'm Betsy.
And this is Betsy. Usually from Texas.
I'm not new. I'm old and returning.
Old. Very old.
Very old. Yes.
Usually from Texas, but today from Delaware.
I have grandchildren in Texas.
Oh, there you go.
Where?
In Houston.
Ah.
My grandson is a rocket scientist there.
Is he really? Wow.
Who's your grandson?
Huh?
Who is your grandson?
Oh, Carl Sibelius. Real Jewish.
Carl Sibelius.
Okay. Because I know a Jewish rocket scientist named David Levy. I wanted to see if we were.
How many Jewish rocket scientists are there?
At least 3.
My cousin is a Jewish rocket scientist. Actually.
4.
There you go. All right. Let's keep going.
Before we go on, according to Rashi, this whole thing about against all the gods of Egypt, the wooden idols rotted and the metal ones melted.
In which verse?
Yeah, where are you reading?
Just read in 12.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so interesting that the gods melted. That's fascinating.
So
I
it
never
says
read that.
angels too are referred to as Elohim. Hence, this term can be taken as a reference to them, the gods. The heavenly forces that guide and protect the destiny of Egypt were struck in this plague, so that Egypt would be completely defenseless. That's from Ramban.
Interesting. Okay, question, and this is a question that I have gotten from students and have no idea how to answer. Weren't, just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, there were presumably fewer than 10, but there were some people who were of value and did not deserve to die. And Abraham argued on their behalf. Were there any firstborn Egyptians, or were there any firstborn Egyptians whose lives should have been considered of value? And what did the beasts ever do of their own accord against the Israelites? Like, why is it not just the firstborn of the soldiers and government officials? Why is it all of the firstborn?
Well, couldn't you ask that about any of the plagues?
Absolutely.
Why did
But
the rest?
but
Why,
this
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say yes, but this one more so because this one's life and death.
Right.
You know, frogs jumping everywhere is kind of uncomfortable, but it's frogs and they go away.
Well, they rot away.
Right, but I have a question. Here it says Moses tells them to slaughter for the Passover. The Passover is just the passing over the homes of the firstborn.
Right.
Then why, if it's just that, we consider Passover the whole 40 years?
We don't. Passover is in the whole 40 years. Passover is the whole Exodus from Egypt.
Just getting out of it?
Just getting out. That's what Passover celebrates. Sukkot celebrates the 40 years. Well, it doesn't really celebrate it, but it kind of does.
Oh, so it took 7 days for them to get out of Egypt.
Well, no.
No.
No, it's you're trying to match up a historical story with a Jewish ritual, and they don't line up so nicely. We celebrate for 7 days because we celebrate for 7 days. It has nothing to do with how long it took them.
We celebrate for 7 days because God commanded.
Right, because
God commanded that we have a festival of matzot for 7 days.
And not one.
That's a fair question.
If it isn't,
No, you're right. If it doesn't line up with the story, then why? Look, 7 is.
The next verses are going to start this festival of matzot, which is 7 days.
Right, but her question is why?
Why what?
Why 7 days?
Didn't it take us an entire week to get to the sea? From the moment that we left, where are we?
Egypt. So you think that?
Doesn't it take a week exactly to get to the sea?
So you think that we have 7 days of matzah because it took 7 days to get to the sea?
I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I have a comment here about the passing. It says, when God says, I will go through the land of Egypt and strike down, like a king proceeding from place to place, but all were struck in a single pass at the same moment. And getting back to what you were saying, Betsy,
Yes.
every firstborn in the land of Egypt, it doesn't say every Egyptian firstborn. It says every firstborn in the land of Egypt. So even non-Egyptians, firstborns were... Wait a second.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Even
Bye-bye.
non-Egyptian firstborns who were in Egypt. But guess what else? It also includes Egyptian firstborns who were in other countries.
Should we let it outside? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
I was wishing Kathleen a Merry Christmas.
well, according to this, says they're setting up the Passover when they say 7 days you shall eat unleavened.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so, but this is, I have an I have
So
an interesting
just,
comment here.
wait, just to clarify though, so God is killing in a single moment all the firstborns who are in Egypt, all the firstborns who are not Egyptian but they're in Egypt, and all the firstborn Egyptians who are not in Egypt. That is a sweeping punishment for a
That's
bunch
huge.
for a bunch of people who, as you said, Betsy, may have been innocent bystanders.
Yeah. Innocent bystanders. Now let's. I hate to do this, and I hate to draw parallels, but let's talk about the citizens of Europe during the Holocaust.
Should they have all been killed?
I'm not saying they should have all been killed, but do you think they were all innocent? Do you think that they were living this and not knowing what was going on?
No, the question is, do you think some of them were innocent? Do you think there were any firstborn here who are innocent? Do you think there were any? I mean, there were very good, the whole, so many Gentiles who actually were the helping the Holocaust victims. I mean, hiding them, pretending to adopt them, whatever.
Right. So Betsy's point, I think, is that you're drawing a parallel, not a parallel, but a connection to Sodom and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah, and
Right.
ask the question: are there not 10 righteous people? There weren't there, but are there not even 10 righteous people here that we should
Right.
have
That's
such
my
a
question.
sweeping punishment of every firstborn in, out, around Egypt?
Right. And then, of the animals, I mean, you kill the firstborn animal, that, yes, that hurts the animal's owners. I mean, this is like, the death of the cattle in some ways, but this is the firstborn of every animal. Like, what is the purpose? I don't know. I have trouble with this.
Any thoughts in Canton? Hi, Mom.
I finally got on.
Oh, hi. Any thoughts over there in Canton?
I got nothing.
All right.
Could you tell me what chapter and verse, please?
We just read verse 12 of chapter 12
Okie dokie.
of Exodus. So God is God just finished telling us about the Passover sacrifice and all that stuff, and now is telling them about the last plague.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about this before, but I don't know that we've actually ever come up with a satisfactory answer, at least not satisfactory for me. If Hashem is doing this, I, the Lord, okay, Ani Adonai,
Mm-hmm.
then why in tradition is it Hamalach Hamavos?
Because it actually tells you this. No, it doesn't. I don't know.
So Nachmanides has a comment here about I, the Lord. Rashi said he quotes Rashi, who says, "I myself." According to the Midrash written by our sages in the Passover Haggadah, since this whole section is Moses speaking to the Israelites, it ought to have said, "He will go through the land. He will mete out punishments," meaning God, and so forth. So the first person verbs are to be interpreted as follows: I myself will go through the land, not an angel, as in Samuel and the Book of Kings. I myself will strike every firstborn, not like a king who has executioners to take revenge on his enemies. I myself will mete out punishments, not the messenger who was assigned to carry out God's deeds on earth, the great angel Metatron.
Okay, I have a problem with the premise of that because this is not Moses talking to the people of Israel. This is God talking to Moses.
Not according to Nachmanides.
Well, they shall take. This is. Where is this? The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This will happen. Speak to the community and tell them this." Okay, your lamb shall be without blemish, blah, blah, blah. They shall take some of the blood. They shall eat the flesh. You shall not leave any of it. This is how you shall eat it. I will go through the land of Egypt. This is still God talking.
Yep.
I am just quoting Ramban.
No, he's quoting Rashi, and you know how I feel about Rashi.
All right, we had a question. Go ahead.
You were just reading where you said, I myself.
Yeah.
Is that God talking?
We think so, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering who was.
But I mean, that does bring us back to your question, Dina, which is this God or is this the angel of death?
It seems pretty clear in the text that it's God.
Right. And where does the idea of the angel of death come from? In this, not in general, but in this story.
I asked you first.
Yeah.
I'm looking for some stuff. Unfortunately, I have none of my books.
I mean, in the Haggadah, it talks about the angel of death. I just went blank. What song?
Oh, it's
Haggadah.
Haggadah.
Yeah.
The last verse,
Right.
or the second to last verse.
So there's got to be enough of a tradition for that to have made it into, a book that every Jew uses.
Well, but
Right.
but wait a second. But Chad Gadya has nothing to do with the Passover story.
I understand that, but the connection that it has to Passover, you think that that's all it took?
I don't know. What is the connection it has to Passover?
It's in the Haggadah.
Well, I know, but why?
We're looking. We're trying to figure this out.
I mean, it's a terrible song anyway. Repetitive, it's depressing, everybody dies.
And they die horrible deaths.
Yeah.
Yes, but you can sing it in 3 different versions of Ladino, which is why it's a big hit in my synagogue. Sorry.
It's just depressing. All right, can we read one more verse?
Okay.
Where are we? 13?
13.
And the blood on the houses where you are staying shall be a sign for you. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, so that no plague will destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt.
I love the way that's written. It's a sign for you when I see the blood.
Well, it's also, what is this? Habatim asher atem sham. The houses where you are staying. God's already saying these are no longer your homes.
Oh,
You may
right.
think this is your house. This is not your house.
Right, that's nice.
It's the house where you're staying. Like God's already like, all right, this is,
Right.
But this might also have something to do with having to share the Pesach offering with family that may not live there but came to join for this particular thing.
Right, and then different families combining because you had to use up the entire thing.
Right.
Right. So I have a sign for you. Since the verse stresses that the sign will be for you, the sages infer that the blood should be placed inside the doorway where it would not be visible to outsiders. The Jewish firstborn was saved from the plague because the blood signified that those inside the house had involved themselves in doing God's will. It was this devotion to the commandment, not the mere presence of a safe house, that protected the Jews.
Right.
Therefore, Rashi notes, an Egyptian firstborn who took refuge in a Jewish home would not survive.
Right, because the obvious question is, why does God need blood on the doorpost? Doesn't God know?
Right, God knows who we are.
Right.
Right, God knows who we are.
So Rashi,
Because perhaps the angel of death doesn't know. I mean, that maybe that's where that's
The angel of death
coming
isn't
from.
doing this. God is.
right.
I got that.
It was not the blood that prevented the plague, nor its absence that caused it. The Torah teaches that whoever unequivocally placed his trust in Hashem and did not fear Pharaoh or his decrees, but fearlessly slaughtered Egypt's God in public and placed the Pesach offering's blood on his doorposts, therefore demonstrating that he was righteous and worthy of being protected from the plague. That's Reb Bachya.
Right. It's all about doing the mitzvah. If you do the mitzvah, then you're worthy of, and you're Jewish, then you're worthy of being saved.
Rabbi, how could God actually pick out the firstborn? How did
It's God. God can do
You
anything.
think God doesn't know which child is your firstborn?
God can do anything.
He,
Right?
he did. How? I can't conceive of how these firstborn died.
That's because you're not God.
Huh?
That's because you're not God.
I
That's
know,
why you
but
can't conceive.
they're really.
God can.
But they're not that.
God can conceive that. God can do anything. There's no limitations on God. Right?
I mean, you have to believe that.
It's a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith.
I just. Yeah, we take it for granted that this happened.
You're right. Which brings me back to the idea of having an emotional connection to this story. If we realize what happens here and that we were saved, that's an emotional connection that I wish we could have. The blood shall be a sign for you, but not for others. Oh yeah, that's what you just read.
All right, so then I have this contradictory, I think it's contradictory to everything else we've just read. It says, was the blood on the doorpost a sign that this family had the courage to defy their Egyptian neighbors and demonstrate an inner liberation? Or was it perhaps a sign that this family has already suffered and should be spared? Or was it simply that this family had complied with God's command? Could God not distinguish between Israelite and Egyptian homes? The Talmud says that once a plague has begun, it does not distinguish between the righteous and the wicked. Some means was needed to mark the homes that merited being spared. But that's totally contradictory to everything else we just read.
Yes, it is.
That's why it's great. Listen to this. Why is this a sign for you? So this is Ibn Ezra. Putting the blood on the doorpost was a sign for you to, quote, stiffen your hearts. So now, it's not Pharaoh who has to harden his heart, it's the Israelites. Why? So that you do not panic when you hear the shrieks of the Egyptians at the deaths of their firstborn.
So how does this harden our hearts? I mean, okay, you're putting blood on the side.
Right.
You know it's lamb's blood. It's protecting you. How does that affect your opinion of your neighbors?
I don't know.
And I can see an argument that if the blood that you put there as an instruction from God, then you'll understand that the deaths of the Egyptians that you're hearing are also an action of God. Maybe something like.
Yeah, no, that's nice. That's nice.
It's almost like strengthening their resolve. You know, the first thing they did was they slaughtered an animal that the Egyptians hold to be sacred. And now, in order to strengthen their resolve, they're going to take some of that blood and put it on their doorpost.
Is it a little bit? It reminds me of I don't even know the reference, but when people would put they put stuff on their face to make them look angrier.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking?
War paint?
Maybe war paint. Is this like war paint, but on their
Well,
homes?
I don't know. And I want to throw another little curve in because I've got a note in one of these places saying that this blood has something to do with circumcision.
Yeah. So there's a connection between, and Rabbi Krebs,
Circumcision comes a few verses later. It
right?
actually circumcision is mentioned.
But there's a connection between the blood of the doorposts, the mezuzah, and the blood of circumcision. There's like
Right.
a triangle there that I honestly don't know that well. Rabbi Creditor once spoke about it, so I learned about it from him. But yeah, there's a very interesting connection between all of those three things.
Sforno agrees with Dina.
Forno!
Agrees with Dina about the fact that it is God who is performing these killings, because he says here it was imperative that God Himself exact this punishment. The word pelis,
Yeah.
I can hardly see, these are little letters, also means to balance, which is the most appropriate in this context, for only God Himself could so perfectly and exactly focus this plague on those who were the chosen targets while sparing the others. In other words, once He released the power of death, or the angel of death would just destroy everything without making distinction. Therefore, Hashem Himself had to perform this action because so much distinction was required in the act.
Wow.
Yeah, I like Sforno.
That's beautiful.
So I found something that goes back to why all of the firstborn, the question that I asked earlier, and I can't tell where this is coming from, but the it relates the fact that it's all of the firstborn with destroying Egyptian gods. That the Egyptians had 7 gods, deities who attended births, a god of procreation, a god of fertility, a guardian of life, this, to that, and a guardian of Pharaoh. And then in killing all of the firstborn, it was not only a slap in the face to the Egyptians, but to the belief that these deities actually protect their firstborn.
Hmm.
So these deities only show up at the birth of a firstborn, not the others?
At any birth.
Okay, so that kind of puts a hole in that theory. Because if they show up at any birth, then why would the killing of the firstborn be different than killing any of the others, any of the other children?
Because let's say it's not firstborn, let's say it's one for each family. Firstborn is easier because not everybody has a secondborn.
But firstborn also reminds us of what Pharaoh did to us.
What Pharaoh did to us, right?
Right. No, I understand
But okay,
that.
so then I have another question that the text is really not clear on, and I don't have a commentary in front of me. These are firstborn females and males, or just firstborn males? Because I don't see. Because the Pharaoh's decree toward us had to do with firstborn males, but this is firstborn everybody's, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think it was the firstborn males, starting with Pharaoh's son, as said explicitly.
But it doesn't say that. So if you look at verse 12, Balayla has a Chol Bachor Ba'eretz Mitzrayim. It doesn't say anything that's male.
But if we
I
go
mean,
back,
so it says Adam, Me Adam, I mean, is there, Rabbi, is there anything in the Hebrew text that I'm missing that tells us that this is talking about males?
No, and I'm looking back and I don't see.
Because I don't know where that comes from, that this is males.
Yeah, I don't. Why were the sons of slave? So there's Rashi seems he doesn't say it explicitly, but he indicates that it's just sons.
But where is that coming from?
From the firstborn of Pharaoh, I think.
But we're not at Pharaoh yet.
No, chapter 11, verse
Okay.
5, I think. This is, so Hashem said, I shall go out in the midst of Egypt. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, but that
It still doesn't tell us.
kol bachor is exactly the same phrase, kol bachor. But does kol bachor mean kol bachor only boys?
Well, Bechor is a masculine noun.
I know, but it's going to be in the masculine anyway.
True.
I mean, I'm wondering why, why we think that this is only males.
Okay, hold on. Here's Sforno again. God bless.
Oh!
Yes, Sforno. All right, go.
Chapter 11, verse 5. His commentary reads, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, even unto firstborn of the maid servant, from the most honored to the most base of all. From the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of captive implies from the most guilty in this matter of slavery and hard labor to the least guilty of all.
Yeah,
so,
but it still say whether
so
it's
the men were slave drivers.
Not necessarily. I mean, go all the way back to Joseph, and who's causing Joseph problems? Not Potiphar. Potiphar's wife. It's Potiphar's wife who causes all of the trouble. There's no indication that it is men who are. I mean, yes, men are the slave drivers in the field, but I can't imagine that men are the only ones at fault in this. Besides, if you kill firstborn, who suffers? The mother. The mother suffers, right? I mean, her husband may be dead or may not be dead, but if the mother survives, every mother, this is a plague for every mother in Egypt.
So I don't think that interpretation of Sforno necessarily concretizes that it was all the men.
I don't see that it does it at all. It talks more about that every family will be afflicted.
Right.
From the most powerful to the least powerful, but it doesn't say anything about, whether the firstborn can be male or female.
Right.
I think we just assume that this is a story of men.
I think we do also. So since we have a really good question, I'm going to give us a week to think it over.
And research it. Let's,
Next Wednesday at noon, Sforno will have the answer.
All right. We are meeting next Wednesday, Rabbi?
I'm up for it if you all are.
Okay.
Yes, but it will be Wednesday at 11 because I'll be back in Texas.
Okay, there you go then. Next Wednesday at 11, at 12, whatever.
At noon Eastern, yes.
Same that time.
9 out here.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to rejoin. I can't tell you how glad I am. And I will have actual books and things next week because I will be in my own house and I know where everything is.
All right. So have a wonderful week, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. You
Sounds
too.
good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.